Brothers and sisters on the Pacific Coast, good evening and welcome to Ppp In Focus. We're going to use the next hour or so to have a discourse with you to examine what has been happening in our country over the past 3 months thereabout since the passage of the no confidence motion in the National Assembly on December 21st, 2018. I have with me in studio here Comrades Gail Teixeira, Joe Hamilton and Priya Manik-Chand. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
All right, folks, wherever you are on the Escribble this evening, just to say the folks in Charity, Maruka, Pomeroon, Supernam, and Regina, Dartmouth, Queenstown, wherever you are, we want you to stay with us for the next hour or so as we try to shed some light on a lot of misperception and misconception and misinformation that is out there with regards to what has been happening. I want to start with Madam Teixeira, and I want to start from the no confidence motion itself. What triggered the no confidence motion and what happened after December 21st?
Well, first of all, I think that the public is well aware that when the government came in, it only came in with a majority of 4,526 votes, which we have challenged in the court, and up to now the court hasn't heard. However, we saw in the 2016 elections, the government at the local government elections was defeated in terms of the PPP won the majority of the local government authorities, 70 of them at that time. 2018, it was repeated, and even more support for the People's Progressive Party. The PPP won 63% of the 80 local authorities. It beat the AFC by 113,000 votes, which, as far as I'm concerned, decimates the AFC as a non-entity in the political sphere of our country, and beat the UPNU by about 47,000 votes. So that it is on that premise that you saw the whittling away of whatever the government had of 4,526. It got worse by 2018, and the reason was taxation, the 200 new taxes, the worsening of the cost of living, the way in which the government has branded Guyana as PNC, green, etc. And so people, it was clear on November 12th, the government had lost the mandate to govern, and we took a no confidence motion on November 15th. The government refused to hear it until November 21st, and on that occasion, December 21st, and the government was lost. It was lost. The government was lost. It lost its mandate to govern, not only at the local government elections, but in the legislature, with a vote of 33-32, and as everyone knows, the Speaker declared that the motion was carried. When he was asked to reverse it, to review it and reverse it, he refused again. And I noticed that important words are left out of the Speaker's ruling, where he says he was not inclined to go in that direction, to reverse his decision, and furthermore, the approach to the courts, etc., could guide the National Assembly, but the words "in the future" seem to have been omitted many times in the government propaganda, and even I noticed in some of the court rulings that were made recently, so that he clearly was not talking about the present. And we had the last 3 months where the government refused to call a date for election, went to the courts to appeal, lost the January 31st, went back into the Court of Appeal to challenge. And the important thing I think that people need to know, that the government of Guyana, as of midnight December 21st, was illegal, had no bearing, no status, no mandate, until the Court of Appeal ruled, the two judges ruled to give them back their so-called legitimacy, so that for 16 hours they were illegal. And I think that is the context I want to come over with, that in fact, by the rulings of 2 of the 3 judges, they in fact restored the legitimacy of the government in a sense, and did it in a manner that I think has everyone totally shocked, bewildered, angry, frustrated, that they've changed the mathematics of making it 34 to win a majority in the parliament. And when we go on in the program, I have very strong views of what this will lead to the parliament and how it will function. But I think that's a recap. I'm sure my colleagues here will want to add to that. But that the GCOM, the role of the GCOM, and as a part of the conspiracy of the government to make sure elections weren't held within the 3 months. And so what has happened yesterday, I think, will go down in history, not only for Guyana and Guyana's jurisprudence, but I think it's going to have a big impact on Commonwealth legislatures and parliaments to do with what they consider their majority, because this has now set a precedent that I'm not aware that exists in the Commonwealth countries.
Before I go to you, one of the things I want to remind, and the folks here on the Essequibo Coast will know very well of the many promises that they would have received during the campaign of the 2014-2015 elections, and of course all those promises were broken, and I think that too would have also helped to set the basis for the no confidence motion based on the results of those elections of which you speak. And one of the prominent promises the farmers here on the Essequibo Coast would have had was the $9,000 of bag of paddy. But I'm going to bring you in here, Joe.
The thing is, thank you. Now, we have already indicated, that is the General Secretary and the opposition leader of the party, that there was a conspiracy between the government and GCOM. Since Friday night, I'm stretching my mind and I'm trying to restrain myself not to include the judiciary in this conspiracy. But when you look at what played out Friday, the question you ask yourself, was it a coincidence that the 22nd was set for ruling, that is the day after the 21st, when the government had no legitimacy? Is it coincidental? Is it part of the whole scheme of things that was playing out? Of course, if you follow people, and I saw the cartoon this morning in Stablet News, a racist cartoon, describes the ruling in the most provocative and the best way you could have described it. And therefore, I believe, and based on all the utterances, right-thinking Guyanese, even supporters of the government, they believe that this 2-1 ruling was a perverse ruling in the court. And I've heard people say that. Now, if people ask why, and as I indicated, I believe that what is playing out in this country is where you have the urban elite middle class trying to regain lost ground, as they say, from us rural people. And I believe that is the fundamental basis for all the political struggles we have and we will continue to have. And I further believe that I look at the ruling from the two judges, the chancellor and the other judge, and I am framing it in that way to make the point that it was a ruling that a class-based ruling, because I believe fundamentally what is happening is that the so-called urban middle class, they are found in David Granger, the standard bearer. After the death of Desmond Hoy, they struggled to find the standard bearer. Corbyn did not fit the bill because he didn't qualify, and they themselves disqualified him from the leadership. Now they have found their standard bearer, and therefore, wherever they reside in the politics and the social sphere of this country, they will do everything necessary, even, I would dare say, go as far as attempting to rig an elections to keep themselves in power. And let me have to make this point that whilst the argument a lot of times, the political discourse revolves around race, I believe that race, the matter of race and politics, PNC, PPP, just overlaps. I believe it's a struggle, a class struggle, where the so-called urban middle class who thought they owned the country after the colonial people left, in the last 3 decades, they find themselves whereby us urban people, we have taken up space that belong to them, whether social, economic, academic space, and therefore they will use this time to do whatever they can to seek to reverse those gains that rural people have made, the working class people have made. And that is the framework within which I would want to start this conversation.
Prayer.
Well, Eddie, thank you very much for having me here. Good night, Essequibo, wherever you are, Essequibo, Pomeroon River, Maruka, all the people who are going to be hearing us this evening. Good night. We're very happy to be talking with you. Let me say at the beginning that I believe that the country is at a place where we can and should be critically examining judgments from the court. I know Guyana is a little old-fashioned. We don't like talking about these decisions. They're sacrosanct and people could get called in for contempt and so on. So I want to say very clearly that nobody on this program here intends to denigrate any particular individual. We're talking about a system, and we're talking about a system that we feel strongly about, and that is actually an important institution in this land that needs to be critically examined. I'm on public record already as saying that we need to get rid of our old libel laws, and we need to start opening discussions, because those laws are so prohibitive. And this not discussing court cases and how people arrive at them and how they sound when they're making them and so on. Again, prohibitive, it interferes with our freedom to express ourselves. Let me just remind viewers that what happened is the majority of people in this country, through their elected representatives in the National Assembly, said about the government that we have no confidence in you, we have no faith in you, we don't trust you, we think you're a bunch of incompetent people who are looking after only yourselves. They said that because, like you said, none of the promises that were made to people, $9,000 per bag of paddy, 20% increase of sugar salary for sugar workers, no sugar estate will be closed, Amerindian land titling will happen, double time the PPP, blackouts will stop. All these issues that they promised, none of them were delivered. In fact, what you saw was Essequibo rice farmers have chosen not to go back into the rice fields. They have had days and nights of blackout, like continuously, where people had to throw away food and cook out food and so on, and go back to the old days, dry your fish outside. I know that was happening on the coast. Rice farmers couldn't, like I said, well, we don't have sugar estates there. There's no land titling done for this entire period that they have been in office, although we left you the model and the money to do it. Amerindians, we had 2,000 of them losing jobs as soon as they came in. So not only did they not fulfill their own promises, they also collapsed many of the government programs that the PPPC had. Like what? We gave every child $10,000. We gave, there was no VAT on electricity and water. There was no, under us, they have placed VAT on electricity and water. They have placed VAT on farm equipment. They have placed VAT on so many, 200 more items. So much so that they're collectively we're paying $63 billion more to the Treasury only in new taxes. And so people got fed up. By 2018, everybody was fed up. They voted in the local government elections to show how fed up they were. And the no confidence motion saw the majority of people in the National Assembly saying that they were fed up of the government and they wanted them out, gone, go back into opposition. They wanted the PPP they wanted an election so that they could decide which political party they wanted in office. But they were sure that it was not the APNU AFC. And so what happened after that night? After that night, immediately after the no confidence was passed, Moses Nagamutu and the entire Nationalist Parliament government side, they said, we recognize the government has fallen. We are going to comply with the Constitution. This is how politics works. We're going to go to an election. The next day, Granger said, we recognize that the government has fallen. There is no need for alarm. We're going to comply with the Constitution. We're going to go to an election. And then all of a sudden, you had some people coming forward, people who I believe had deep financial interests in keeping this government in place. People who had in 2014, and I'm naming one, Nigel Hughes. In 2014, he himself had been an advocate for a no confidence motion against the PPP, and they had the same configuration, 33 members on the opposition and 32 in the government. All of a sudden, he says that 33 is not a majority of 65. You need 34. This is the same man who 2 years ago, his whole party, his wife, had seconded the motion, the no confidence motion, in 2014. I believe he has financial interests that have to be protected and can only be protected under this government because of the nature of those interests. And so that's why he came up with this figure. So what we had was the government going to court to say that the majority did not vote for the no confidence motion because the majority of 65 is not 33. It's actually 34. So if you're in Pomona and you got 65 marbles in your yard, 65 drinks bottles, and you trying to decide which is more, you will find that 33 is more than 32. If you're in Hoostadarin and you got 35 children in the primary school, 65 children in the primary school, and you're trying to put them and break them up in half, you can't get half, so you'll have one group with 33 and one group with 32, and you will believe too that the group with 33 is more, because everybody in Guyana believes that 33 is the majority in a 65 member house. 33 is the majority in 65 drinks. If you got 65 beers and you want to decide which side more, the side that got 33 beers will have more. If you got 65 runs and you're in a cricket match and you're deciding who get more and somebody get 33, that side got more. Wherever you are in the country, and I'm sure it's no different for you in Maruka, it's no different for you in any part of the Essequibo Coast, because all across Guyana, that's what people believe. Now, they took it to court, and Roxanne George, the Chief Justice in Guyana, said, what foolishness are you talking about? In the context of 65, when you have 65 members in the House, 33 is the majority, the motion was properly passed, right? So the government became, she reinforced the no confidence motion that was passed. There was no stay granted there. On the 21st of March, there was a 90-day period in the Constitution which said 90 days after a government is defeated by a no confidence motion, you have to have an election. You would know that the government dilly-dally, find every excuse under the sun, collaborate with GCOM, the chairman sick, this one sick, the one sick, they're not going to work, they're not. 18 days after that no confidence motion is when the president first met the leader of the opposition. 66 days after that no confidence motion is when he first said to GCOM, prepare for an election. Now GCOM, the night of that vote, GCOM is a body that sits there. The night of that vote, they should have been preparing, but we'll talk about them later. So what happened is on Friday, the government appealed the Chief Justice's ruling, and on Friday, there are 3 judges sitting in the Court of Appeal. One judge said the Chief Justice is right, and he said what all of Guyana knows, that in a 65-member House, 33 is the majority. And 2 judges, the Chancellor and Justice Don Gregory, said that no, you need 34 to have a majority in a 65-member House. That makes absolutely no sense to me. It is not logical, it is not reasonable, it is not supported by anything that convinces me that they're right. In fact, they didn't sound like they were convinced themselves that they were right. But that's what they said. And I believe they're wrong. I believe they are hopelessly incorrect. We will test that judgment. In fact, as we speak, our lawyers are drafting appeals for the CCJ. Now in Essequibo, you may recall that Guyana joined the Caribbean Court of Justice, which is our final court of appeal. That's based in Trinidad. It's where judges external to Guyana will determine whether or not this decision was right or wrong. And we're hoping to file, the PPP is going to be filing an appeal as early as tomorrow or Tuesday, depending on how quickly we get the filing process happening, but we're preparing that as we speak. And I do know also that the other litigants and lawyers. For example, Christopher Ram had filed a motion saying that the government must comply with the Constitution and call elections. He's also appealing. So that's where we're at. We're here now where the 2 members of the 3-member court of appeal has said that you need 34 to be a majority of 65. And we believe they're wrong, and we believe that is going to be vindicated. Their inaccuracy here will be vindicated in the court of appeal.
Thanks, Priya. I know Comrade Gail and Joe would want to spend some time to talk about the decision, but probably we should talk a little bit more about the situation on the Essequibo Coast. And if you walk across the Essequibo Coast here, you go to Anna Regina, you would see so many young people sitting there, nothing to do. You go to Lima by the corner, by the GWI well station there, you will see young people sitting there doing absolutely nothing. You go to Charity any single day and you would see a lot of young people there. And that is one of the problems that I think led, or one of the issues that led to the results of the local government elections, which more or less was used as part and parcel of the guide for the confidence motion. Essequibo has not been moving anywhere, and I think that is a concern not only for PPP supporters, but all Essequibans who...
It's not just Essequibo, it's the entire country. That's gone down. I mean, I go regularly to Bartica, and the boatmen who are at the Pre-Castelling, for example, who go to the islands, who go to Essequibo coast and so on. All of them are punishing. Every one of them are punishing. The system they have, for example, Bartica has 53 boats that traverse between the 2 areas. And the men complain to me every time they see me. We have a meeting on the docks. That's what we do, whether it's at Purica or Bartica, because they know they have someone who will listen to them. And I'm PPP, and at first they thought, we don't want to be with the PPP. Now it has changed. But the issue was that a boatman now only has 1 load every 8 days. For the Purica Bartica run in Essequibo Islands, there's a similar problems. And so this is indicative of the difficulties, not only that the boatmen are punishing, but it's indicative of the level of business and trafficking going on in terms of goods moving, people moving, activities that were fundamental. I mean, the Essequibo River was a thriving business that people could have got in just by transportation by boat. And that has just collapsed. It is in trouble. The men cannot keep their families going, keep their boats going. And of course, in the meantime, the government's increased the registration fees, the licensing fees, are putting new requirements on them without any notice. So I just use that, the gateway to Essequibo Coast, as an example of the type of thing that's happening with the rice farmers, the agricultural producers, the professionals who work on the coast. And even further away, when you come to Moruca and the further interior areas, upriver of the Pomeroon, St. Denis and all these areas, life gets harder, the cost of living gets more, the transportation to get all these things in because they're using fuel, etc., becomes worse. And so what we're seeing is that a real worsening of the situation in Guyana. The foreign currency has worsened, the exchange rate, and so people are paying more for imports. At the same time, as Priya pointed out, our export base, rice, sugar, bauxite, gold, has all gone down. And the funny thing is that all of us thought in Parliament that with the government was decimated, slaughtered at the 2018 local government elections. So we thought that, oh boy, they're going to come in with a budget that's really trying to rectify some of these issues, go back to their promises. They didn't. They just plowed on, ignoring the plight of people, being deaf to the needs of the people, and just plowed on. And the budget is an example of extravagance, of wastage, of no projects that are transformative, and no assistance to areas and sectors that are in trouble. And so they have become so inert to their own power that they feel that they're invincible, that they can't be moved. And I think that's part of the shock with the no confidence motion. They went into Parliament, remember Priya and Joe, bring it on, it's 33 to 32, we've got to 33, all of a sudden 33 is not the required number. Now it becomes 34. And so they I think were absolutely astounded that the motion went through. And so I think that all of what's happened in the last 3 months was, one, to give them time by appealing at the legislature, at the judicial level. The delays in GCOM are horrendous and are in violation of the Constitution. Then you have, I'm not a lawyer like Priya, and I do share with her absolutely that I think our libel laws and the sacrosanctity of the judiciary really, we're living in some other century. If you go into developed democracies, people commenting all the time on judicial rulings in the media, even in Parliament and stuff like that. So what frightens me about what's happened is that we have seen the whittling away of democracy. So we can talk about the economy and the broken promises and what they said they were going to have, clean and good governance and upholding the Constitution and bringing constitutional reform. They violated those ones too. So that we have seen the whittling away of our Constitution and the democracy in our country. The appointment of the GCOM chairman, for example, unilaterally by the president. We've seen the president office and the signature of Harman instructing the Police Service Commission to stop the promotion of the police officers. We've seen the Judicial Service Commission expired almost 2 years now, no appointment, yet the president every month or so says, I'm going to appoint. We can't appoint because it's a parliamentary mechanism. You've had the public service be overthrown, basically, in the way in which it is configured now. You've seen the state boards are full of party activists of the APNU AFC. You have seen ministers interfering in decisions of boards. And so you have the Simone Broom case, right, Priya, of her giving instructions to the Public Service Commission in which, I think it was the Chief Justice, said she can't do that. Then you have the President taking away people's lands. And the court again ruling against that, saying he can't do that, it's unconstitutional, and he doesn't rectify it. So what has happened between December 21st and now, to me, is the continual, what was a stealthy whittling away of basic democratic institutions and norms in our country to what is now the big blow for me is December 21st. And for me as a political scientist, not a lawyer, is that what has transpired is that the judiciary has crossed the tentative lines that exist in all democracies, the three branches of government, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. Here is the judiciary, telling Parliament what its majority should be. And in fact, in the standing orders, it says in a vote that it shall be determined by a majority of the votes of the elected members thereof present and voting. That's all it is. It is basically a majority. When you look at the Indian Lok Sabha, 540 members, the majority there is 271. A half plus one, for example. And that's standard. You go into all the democratic parliaments of this world, this is what they're talking about. And a majority is a majority exceeding 50%. That's the words that I use, very simply. In this context, in March 21st, and I intend to find a way to raise it with the Commonwealth and the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, because the separation of powers make it clear that, one, what is the basis? The three should not intersect or intervene or interfere. They should respect each other's, constitutional frameworks, and also that all three must be transparent and accountable in the decisions they take. And that's why I support wholeheartedly Priya that the judiciary is not above scrutiny. They must be as transparent as everybody else if the executive is entitled in the legislature. In this case, the judgment threw the speaker under the bus in terms of saying, well, twice he refused to reverse his decision. He's been thrown under the bus, and clearly for the legislature, unless it's a 2/3 majority, which is required in the Constitution, the standing orders have always held. The Constitution says the Parliament makes its own procedures. In this case, this ruling here is the judiciary giving a ruling to the legislature of how they calculate their majority. And I think it's an interference of the judiciary in what is a constitutional requirement of Parliament setting its own procedures. And before I forget it, the one example I want to give, Priya may remember this, in 2012, Ramjatan and Rupert Rupnarayan and I think it was Harman came to the House to reverse the standing orders, to have a majority on the standing committees given to the opposition because they claimed they had more votes than we had, more seats than we had. It went to the standing order, and the standing order, bring it to the House, the 33 voted for that. So the opposition members took over the majority, all the standing committees. Prime Minister Sam Hines went to the court on this matter with the Attorney General, Anil Nandalal. And the ruling of Ian Chan is that this was not a matter this was not a constitutional breach, first of all, that it was not a matter that the court could rule on. This was a internal matter for the National Assembly to rule on the composition of the committee and the numbers on the committee. And I remember Anil wanting to appeal that. So that what they have done now, it is, to me, is another nail in the coffin that they call democracy, and that this will have far-reaching and major consequences, not only in terms of bringing back an illegal government. It's almost like they did CPR to a government that was dead. They gave it 16 hours. It was illegal and unconstitutional, and it has suddenly been given a CPR by the most bizarre means, because I believe they knew they couldn't override the Constitution. They couldn't go against the Constitution. And therefore what they've done is overridden the legislature and interfered in the legislature, which is a very dangerous precedent, and therefore allowed the government to continue on its merry way. And we have to be very clear that this struggle doesn't end on March 21st. We got to keep going. We got to challenge this at the Caribbean Court of Justice, as Priya said. We are quite confident that our arguments are valid, and that certainly, I believe, legislatures in other parts of the world and the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and the Commonwealth should be watching this case with great scrutiny, because this will have major consequences for legislatures across the world. And in Guyana, we have to continue to struggle. We have to struggle on the economic issues, on the political and democratic issues, and we have to keep calling for elections as soon as possible. This hasn't taken the government off the hook. For me, this hasn't taken them off the hook, that because of 3 months, and they've now given this resuscitation by the judiciary, that they feel now they can go until 2020 or whenever they want.
The thing is, I heard people commenting that the ruling on Friday strengthens and upholds our democracy. That's a fallacy. The ruling on Friday shatters our democracy, as Gail has outlined, because the ruling, as Gail is suggesting, instructing, ordering the legislature that is separate and distinct from the judiciary, how they should conduct their business and what they should do. The other point I need to make, Eddie, is some people gave the impression that the judges are alpha and omegas, their decisions mustn't be questioned at all. But I give people, for the past and for the present, and Gail would know that the most perverse chairman in our time that run the Elections Commission was a former judge, Mr. Ari Wallace. So this thing where people try to suggest to us that they are beyond reproach is a nonsense. That's the first point. The second point for your generation, Eddie and Priya, the present chairman was a former judge. And we have seen how he has conducted himself. And sometimes you ponder and wonder, could this person have been fair as a judge?
Yeah.
Because this attitude and characteristic could not have come upon him after he resigned from his judgeship. This is the person who we have. And so, for persons who try to say to us that you shouldn't criticize judgments made by judges, I'm putting before the Guyanese people. We have had a judge conspiring for more than 2 decades or thereabout with a government to deny people the right to vote, to deny the citizens the right to elect a government of their choice in this country. And therefore, this myth that these people, once they put on their robe, are beyond reproach, it is just what it is. It's a nonsense, and I think we must speak to it. Without castigating, we must make the point. With Mr. Patterson here, oh my God. What do you say about him when you look at what he has done with the Guyana Elections Commission? And you would want to believe that, you would want to think, I have said, that except for Joe's Do Not Sing, all the other chairmen of the Elections Commission, they were not legal people. And we didn't have this situation that we have here with a person who served for years, for decades, in the judiciary and was a former judge. And so I thought I make that point so that people would not try to deny us the right to criticize the judgment.
All right, I think we have probably about 10 minutes or so to go. What I want to do, because the folks here on the Escobar Coast, they would want to get a sense of direction as to where we go from here. And I think I'm going to bring you in here, Priya, to...
Right. So listen, you got to be very careful, and I'm asking you to be very, very vigilant about the government's propaganda. Anything put out by the Department of Public Information is probably a lie. Anything said by ministers are probably extremely exaggerated. For example, at Sequibble, let me say they said, they actually put this out, that on Friday when you had your protest, that you had about 10 people, and then the chairman had to scramble and send 3 buses into Mainstay to bring people out. And you know that's not true. You had between 700 to 1,000 persons, I'm told. I'm further told that the only person from Mainstay there was Yvonne Pearson. Mainstay did not, they might not have come out there to protest. They made their own protests. And so you know that's not true. But that is all over Facebook, that you didn't turn out to protest the government. Everything they say almost is a lie. They said that we were going to beat people up on the road, the PPP, the most peaceful people. That we were going to beat people up on the road, and that we were going to put people in green t-shirts and we were going to cause trouble on the streets. As you know, we went, we protested, we had our voices heard. We chose not to go down Regent Street because we didn't want to disrupt businesses. We didn't want to have people running and locking up their stores because they might have known as us. They might have thought it was the PNC coming, or whenever the PNC coming, you run and lock up your doors. We didn't do any of that. Nobody was beaten, no building was burnt, nobody was sexually harassed, because we don't behave like that. The point I'm making is whenever they say something to you, don't believe it. It is almost assuredly going to be a lie. And the second point I'm making is stay mobilized. We said from 2018 November, after the in the run-up to the local government elections, and then after, that elections were going to come shortly. Whether it's tomorrow, whether the CCJ says they're illegal and it's 90 days from now, or whether it's in 2020, the elections will come. And that will be your chance. That will be your chance to go and remove this government from where they are and install a political party into office that you believe could best look after your interests. You have to ask yourself some questions. We aren't all perfect. Whenever you put together a collection of people, you'll have some delinquents. So in any cabinet, you'll have 1 or 2 people you don't like, somebody that didn't speak to you properly. I'm sure we had those in the PPP government, or somebody you felt wasn't looking after your interests. There'll be 1 or 2 people in any cabinet. But what you have to look at as a whole is which government served you best. Who gave you more services? Who were you able to tell off when you didn't like what they were doing? Who did you see coming into your communities when they were a government, coming and talking to you, coming and hearing your issues, coming and addressing those issues? Who brought you the new ferry? Who gave you the new schools? Who gave you the new dorms? Who gave you the new hospitals? They don't always function, I would give you that. I would tell you that. But, or the way we would like them to function. Who put more doctors in your hospitals?
The Essequibo Road.
Who gave the Essequibo Road? Who allowed for freedom of worship, freedom of choice? So now, many of you in Essequibo, because you believed the AP and UAFC, went and voted for APNU. Not all of you, a few of you, but a few more than would have done that before. Did you see us coming back to you anyway? We came back to you because we understand people make mistakes. And we'd like to say to you that your chance is coming where you could say finally once and forget the court and forget the decisions they will make. If none of that goes our way, your chance will come where you could look after yourself and you could look after your children and you could look after your grandchildren by marking your X next to the PPP's cup. But before we get to that date, we have to remember that we have to reach people. We have to make sure our neighbors come out. We have to talk to people who ordinarily didn't really like us, but you want them to vote for us now, because the good thing that has happened with the PNC getting into office is people now have a basis of comparison. So your neighbor who was always voting for the PNC, who liked the PNC, and who mother voted for the PNC and grandfather voted for the PNC, and so they were blindly voting for the PNC, they now have a chance to say, well, hey buddy, this is what the PPP used to do, and this is what this PNC, AP, and UAFC is doing. And so don't reject people who voted for the AFC the last time. Don't turn away new people who you know are traditionally PNC. Bring everybody on board. Help us to do that. Stay mobilized. Essequibo has a huge part to play in how Guyana will look in the next 10 years, because you will decide, you get to decide who's going to be the next government. And so this is a special role Essequibo, Moruca, Pomeroon, it's a special role you have to play that nobody else can play for you, that nobody else can do the way you can do it. So we ask you to make sure that regardless of how the courts rule, the lawyers will take care of the courts, but you have to take care of the election that will come either this year or next year.
Thanks, Priya. I want to bring you in here, Joe.
The quickly, Eddie, is that, as Priya said, we talked our heads off in 2011, 2015 to persons who were under 30 who couldn't understand what we were saying. People like me and Gail, because they had nothing to look at. But now they're able to look at the predictions we made of how the PNC will govern. They're seeing it for themselves. And so we say to you that you have the power. You have the power in your hand. The government don't have the power over you. And you will have your opportunity, your chance very shortly to exercise that power and to boot these people out who have not served you, and to once again elect a government that has served you in the past. And therefore we say to you, the struggle is not over. The struggle continues. We say to you, stay mobilized. We say to you, continue to listen to the People's Progressive Party civic members and leaders when they come out to you, when they come into your community. And together we will overcome and take back our country.
Yeah, I think that some people after yesterday, I mean Friday, have felt down and demoralized. And I want to say this, that everything must be taken in a context. What we've shown is that there's a movement that is growing in this country. The first indication, that was November 12th, where you had this large turnout of people who voted for the PPP, and a large turnout who didn't vote at all because they did not want to vote for the APNU AFC. They were betrayed by the APNU AFC and all their broken promises. That movement is growing in the sense of various civil society bodies have come on board, and particularly after the no confidence motion. They have been standing up, they've been calling on the government to obey the Constitution. They pointed out about the dangers that Guyana faces and so on. So People's Progressive Party Civic, we're not alone. It's something like the 70s and 80s where there's an expanding of the movement for democracy and the movement to protect constitutional rule, the movement of the right to election. What the government has done to us on March 21st in the courts is that they have our right to vote in elections, which was constitutionally provided for within 3 months or with an extension of 2/3 of the parliament, was taken away from us. So we now are in this limbo as to when elections will be held. The point is elections are going to be held. The movement cannot die and will not die. And that is the responsibility of the People's Progressive Party, its leaders, not only at the top, but throughout the country, in every community. And we have to be able to, with our groups and supporters, as Priya said, this is where we have to expand. We have to broaden. There's space in the People's Progressive Party. We have space. There is no definition in the PPP that you have to be of a particular religion, of a particular race, of a particular gender, of a particular height, or with or without disabilities. There's no such criteria. Your Guyanese join. You love your nation, you want to see our country go forward, and you love the PPP to do it for you. Those are the basic criteria. And we're seeing more and more people come to us that felt betrayed by the APNU-FC, who traditionally voted for the APNU-FC. So we have to stay mobilized. March 21st, there were protests and demonstrations in every single region of Guyana, every single region. And that will make the government feel uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. They're running into all these communities saying, oh, we love you, we love you. Where were they for the 4 years? They got someone going to Kitty. They've never gone to Kitty for 4 years. They put up a ad in the papers, DPI, and that's why Priya is absolutely correct. Don't believe anything DPI puts up. Because they put up an ad, a Prima school being opened with all the children in front, a beautiful ad. Granger has opened it. Granger never went there. The Minister Yalakak never went there. The school has not been officially commissioned up to now. The school's been used, but it's not officially commissioned. And so the Prima people are saying, no government minister, none, have come into Upper Mazaruni, not just Prima, since election time, May 2015. Not one village. Dawn Hastings, who is from one of them, lands down where the plane has her, and then she catches into a village. And she is what the minister, what you call it?
Public affairs.
Some affairs of some kind. She has made no representation for our communities. So Upper Mas, Cayuni, these areas are no man's land. So when you talk about Georgetown, you can imagine now people saying in the Upper Mas, these areas, nobody has come to us for the last 4 years. And then you have people in Georgetown saying, nobody came to us either. And after the local government election, when they're slaughtered, and they didn't go in after the local government election, they were after the no confidence. Then they started running into all the communities, promising they're going to do roads, promising sweeties and goodies. And what is so interesting for me, coming out of some of us from a particular age group, is that the voting with our feet. People have different forms of protest. You can go out and picket, and you can also boycott. And so when they've seen these community meetings, particularly in areas of Georgetown, people have decided, I don't have time to waste. And not responding. They didn't do anything for me. Why do I have to give up my time to go listen to them? And so people are finding their own means of showing their dissatisfaction with the government, and this is only going to get better and stronger. Because I swear to you, if I think I know the PNC cat as I do, that from Monday or over this weekend, they will go back in with all the bravado that they've been baptized and resuscitated by the judiciary, and they continue with the same treatment of our people, the same behavior until they're forced to have elections. And we will have to force them to have elections, because whichever way they go, they're not going to want to hold elections this year, and they're going to find ways to extend their life as long as possible. So people stay mobilized, stay strong, don't be demoralized. This is just like, a little bump in the road. This is just a little bump. And we are stronger and better with every day going by. Whenever they decide that they're going to have continuous registration and or house to house and or claims and objection, or all three, please make sure you get yourself registered, you get your ID cards, You get your birth certificates. Those of you who've never been registered, get your name on the list. Use every opportunity, not like we've heard in the last couple of elections. I can go, and they're busy and stuff like that. This is the lifeline of our nation. Our right to vote, our right to choose a government of our choice, and nobody is to take that away from us. They tried for 28 years and we won. This time we ain't waiting no 28 years. In the next year minimum, if not before, and hopefully as soon as possible, we have elections. And we will be in government, and the PPP has got its program ready of how it's going to turn back all the nonsense and the damage that APNU AFC has done to our country. And we can do it. With you, we can do it. We can do anything to save our country and put it back on record in progress, as we did before 2015.
Thank you very much, Ms. Shearer, Mr. Joe Hamilton, and of course, Priya Manik and members of Parliament of the People's Progressive Party for being here this evening and to talk with the folks here on the Escalade Coast, let them know exactly what is happening. What we will do, we'll try our utmost to continue to provide you with the kind of information here on the Escalade Coast with regards to what is happening at the political level, at the level of the economy, and of course, to continue to engage you. And I just want to reinforce that you stay mobilized as much as possible and you look out. They're going to be coming here in Escalade very soon to probably some new promises, not necessarily the $9,000 a bag for Paddy and all the other promises. So for you to stay on the lookout, stay vigilant, and we're going to talk to you sometime very, very soon again. Until then, bye for now. Have a good rest of the evening.
Thank you very much, Escalade.